Bemi, they're going to send you an offer. You may not like it, but I can tell you, you will experience the exact words he said, a life-changing career with Novo Nordisk. And I took that bet and decided, okay, let's try it. I'm moving out of my comfort zone, being in FMCG for over 8 years, to pharma that I knew nothing about. Even though it did feel like going back home, because I had a background in biomedical sciences. So I took that plunge, and I took on responsibility for English-speaking West Africa, mainly Nigeria, Ghana. I did that role for about 18 months. And then I remember my boss then reached out again and said, by the way, I think you need to take on more. And this is from a mindset of being an entrepreneur. Sometimes, again, going back to what I said about the company training you for where they want you to go, you training yourself for where you want to go. There are so many times I hear, maybe not the Gen Zs, but people generally complaining, oh, my plate is full, I'm doing 3 people's jobs. From the HR perspective, I do recognize that we need to do more in terms of building capacity and making sure that we spread out the responsibility, hire as many people that we need to hire. But there's also the place of balancing the bottom line, where you can't just go gung-ho and just hire randomly. But I also believe it's an opportunity for us as entrepreneurs to take on responsibility. And I'll give you an example. I remember when I was at Guinness, when you work in different departments in HR, there are 2 areas I hate in HR. The first one is recruitment. I know it seems strange as an HR person. Thankfully, I have a large team, so when I need to recruit, I delegate. And then when it gets to the easiest part, like, okay, now it's time to review the top 2, I go into it. I don't enjoy interviewing. And then total reward, because it has to do with a lot of numbers. I don't like numbers, but I have to deal with it anyway. And I remember when I was at Guinness, one of my managers was the reward manager for Guinness. And she used to give me some responsibilities, make me help with this, do this with reward statement. When I was going to interview for Novo Nordisk, my business case was simple. Design a total reward plan for the Nigeria business. This was a responsibility that on a good day, I didn't want to do it. But I always went into some of these tasks with the mindset of take on more, build capacity. And so it seemed easy, and then I got the job, but it was through pain, because I don't enjoy total reward. I don't, but I do it because I know I have to do it as part of my job. As being the head of HR, I need to review total reward. I need to design policies around total reward, and I do it. Same with recruitment. I don't enjoy it, but I do it because I have to do it. So I'm just sharing that sometimes you need to take on responsibilities and tasks that you generally are not comfortable with when you're trying to be an entrepreneur. Again, just putting some of my deliberate acts to try and improve myself. Again, when people come to me as a coach and they're saying, what can I do to build my career? What training should I do? The first thing I tell them is that don't go for a training. In fact, when people ask me, what course should I study to be an HR person? I said, don't study anything. You need to try and get your hands dirty first before you now go and get the training, because that's the way I've seen it work. So gradually, as I was building my profile as an HR person, I realized now to be managing a team at some point, how do I build capacity as a leader? And even though I was trying to manage a team, I realized I needed to go for some formal training. And so I reached out to Cranfield University, registered for a program called Women as Leaders. And I went for the training. I came back, and I think it was a few months after I came back, my boss got another job. And then she called me one random day and said, by the way, have you applied for my job now that my job is vacant? And I was like, no, I've not applied for it. And she said, why? I said, I don't think I'm ready. She said, no, go ahead and apply. Again, cut the long story short, I got this role as head of P&O in 2018. Now, if you remember when my profile was being read, it says I'm responsible for Africa. So when you look at the map of Africa, take away North Africa, take away South Africa, the 49 markets in the middle, the 49 countries in the middle is what I'm responsible for. That's also why I have more gray hairs these days. Because, so the countries that you typically see in the news on CNN, the Sudans, of course, Nigeria, and a few other countries, those are the countries that I manage. And I remember that the office for Middle Africa then was based out of Dubai. And my first project as head of P&O was to move the office from Dubai to Nairobi, Kenya. And that for me was learning the job. I took on that responsibility, I ran with it, took that opportunity, and then when it was time to move, I had to take that call. Do I need to move? We had a conversation with my husband, and we just decided, yes, let's move. And so I moved to Nairobi in December 2019. The third part of the story that I would just like to share here is, remember that I took on responsibilities for Middle Africa in 2018. Sometime last year, again, one of my bosses reached out and said, yes, you're comfortable where you are, but we still feel you need to take on more. And it's interesting when people come to you and feel like, when you feel like you've maxed out, and people just come and say, you need to take on more. Sometimes I ask myself, is it that I'm not working? Or do people think I'm idling away? But I've also realized, especially for people with the intrapreneur mindset, people always know. They always know when this person can take on more. They know when this person can take on more responsibility, and so they bring those responsibilities. So currently, yes, I head Middle Africa, but at the same time, I'm also driving leadership programs in an area called Middle East, Africa, and the Commonwealth of Independent States. So Commonwealth of Independent States would be the former Soviet states like Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, countries that you've never heard of. I get the opportunity to work with them, but I do think it's a big privilege that I get that responsibility. In addition, with the mindset of an entrepreneur, I started as head of P&O. There was an opportunity to drive sustainability programs in the organization. I took on that responsibility sometime in, I think it was 2020. 2 years after, in 2022, they created a department called Communications. Thankfully, I'd already started to drive internal communications from my own place as HR. And so when they created the department, it's who else would do communication? So that's how I got to become the head of P&O and communications. I'm just trying to share this story about my own personal career because I feel it's nice to read books and hear some of these stories, but I also believe that you can connect with someone that, again, an Ekiti girl that you see somewhere around. I'll just do some reflections as I start to round up. There's a book I would like to recommend, actually a few books I would like to recommend that would help as you reflect on entrepreneurship. The first one is How Will You Measure Your Life? I don't know how many of us have read that book. That book is a transformational book. And there was something it says in that book. It says you can talk all you want about having a strategy for your life, understanding motivation and balancing aspirations with unanticipated opportunities. But ultimately, this means nothing if you do not align those with where you spend your time. How do you spend your time? People say time is the ultimate currency. I've revised that to say your energy is the ultimate currency because you can have the time and supposedly use it, but what type of energy do you invest in some of the activities that you engage in when you are working for companies you work with? The other thing I would like to encourage us to think about, especially as a coach, is that the power of, remember I talked about community and relationships, the importance of coaches and mentors in the lives of you as an entrepreneur. I'll just share briefly about some of the coaches I've worked with. The first person I'll talk about, her name is Ngozi Adebiyi. She actually was my first manager at Guinness. And currently she's one of the coaches I work with, herself and Malini. And there was a day they asked me a question when I was having a coaching session. And I remember very clearly, Malini particularly asked me a question like, Bemi, you are the head of P&O. What is holding you back? And that question hit me because, I'd been head of P&O for almost 3 years. But she was just asking me some reflective questions like, what is holding you back? Like, put your foot down, make the decisions you need to make. And those reflections are some of the things I will tell you that has transformed my life critically. The other person I would like to talk about is, his name is Ken, one of my managers that I've worked with in my organization. And in 2021, he had nominated me for a program. It was also a coaching program with some Harvard professors. Both of them are called, one of them is Anne Morris, the other one is Francis Frey. I also remember during one of the coaching sessions, one of them said to me that the way you describe yourself, you are not necessarily just an HR person. It's almost like a GM or a chief operations officer role. Because I consult, and I tell you that those are some of the reflections of having that mindset of being an entrepreneur. It is when you approach your responsibility and your role from that perspective of, rather than saying, don't give me more, it's 5 o'clock, I need to close. Yes, we need to recognize work-life balance, again, back to the Gen Zs. I don't believe in COVID transformed our lives and said, yes, we can work from home, flexi work and all of that. But I can tell you that there are times that the work will place a demand for you. And as an exception, without people telling you, you need to take a step and say, okay, I need to do this differently for this time, and then go back into your work balance and do what you need to do. No, you shouldn't be the one telling people that, oh, it's work-life balance, I can't take more challenge. I can tell you genuinely, the organization will find the people that can take more, give them the responsibility, give them the opportunity, and they will take it. Again, on behalf of the organization, I do believe that organizations need to take work-life balance seriously and respect people's personal time. But I'm also saying, as entrepreneurs, we need to be reflective and take on responsibilities, making sure that we explain and clarify them very clearly. Some more reflections I would like is that lead through sustainable leadership. In one of my master's theses, I remember writing about sustainable leadership and how it's important that for us as leaders, we need to reflect and think about what it means to lead sustainably. Now, don't think about leadership from the perspective of, I manage a team. Don't think about it from that perspective. Think that in my position as an entrepreneur, I own the business. I lead in the role where I am. How do I lead sustainably? You need to learn to challenge the status quo. Make sure when you're reflecting, you don't just take things as they are and say, it has always been done this way, and this is how it will always be. Always learn to challenge the status quo. Live urgently. Remember, I talked about time being the ultimate currency. I also believe that your energy is very, very important. How you channel your energy, how you invest your energy is very important. There's another book I would like to recommend to us. It's called Think Again by Adam Grant. And one of the things I've learned from that book is the power of not knowing. True entrepreneurs learn to say, I don't know. How can I know more? When you feel like you've known everything, you have everything figured out, you are not going to lead sustainably. So you need to learn to think again. The other thing I would like to mention is being present. Another book, Atomic Habits. There was a part where he said that it's not so much about setting goals. He says your goals will always fall to the level of the systems you've put in place. So you show up every morning, you already have a schedule, you already have a plan of what you do. Focus on those things rather than thinking of, I want to become the next CEO. I want to become the next HR director. How can you focus on the little things you are doing one step at a time today that will build up to where you're going? And then the last thing I'll mention is stretch. Remember I said that for a lot of people who say they are truly entrepreneurs, you will always find yourself in places where you need to stretch beyond your place of comfort. There's a question I would like to ask, and it says that if you were not toning it down, how would you come across to people around you? If you've ever heard from people saying that, what is your own? Exactly what Ossie was saying, that why did you carry this thing on your head? Like, is it your father's business? Tell them that, yes, it is my father's business. Because remember I talked about the organization I worked for, about succeeding 100 years over. There are very, very few companies. And I think it's the power of the kind of people that work in those organizations. As I begin to round up, let me just take it to the last point. I'll skip this one. Remember what I said about no one owes you. No one owes you. It's very important that we learn that. Organizations will train you for where they want you to go. You will train yourself for where you want to go. Remember that you have to own your career. You have to own your role, and you have to understand that this is where I am and this is where I'm going. Do not wait until the organization says this is where you need to go. Just to emphasize on the power of staying in a place. I'm also one of those HR people that when I review CVs and I see that you've jumped 4 roles in 5 years, I have questions. It doesn't mean I won't talk to you or interview you, but I have questions. Because I do believe in the power of staying, being resilient, and then just focusing and concentrating on one thing. So as a roundup, remember that as entrepreneurs, we are leaders. Don't wait until you lead a team on your own. Remember that actually, no one owes you anything. Thank you.